danger in the wrong kind of thinking. This next sutta shows us different ways of overcoming the negative thinking and how we do it basically. So we already seen that wisdom is an important aspect, and this one here is sort of worded in a similar kind of direction. So the removal of thoughts in this particular discourse of the Brahmali. Thus have I heard on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Samadhi in Jeta's Grove and another thing that has piety. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, venerable sir, they replied, and the Blessed One said this: Bhikkhus, when a bhikkhu is pursuing the higher mind, from time to time he should give attention to 5 signs, to 5 things. What are the 5? And these 5 are the 5 ways of overcoming unwholesome thoughts. Now, I should explain here that pursuing the higher mind is the Chitta Pali, and the high mind is basically another word for the deep states of Samadhi, particularly the jhana states. That's what it means, the higher mind here. So pursuing, we're practicing to attain Samadhi, and we're trying to get there. This is what we need to give attention to. 5 different things that we give attention to. Here, bhikkhus. The bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign, there arise in him evil or bad or unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, or with delusion. Then he should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. When we give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, and any bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice might knock out, remove, and extract the coarse peg by means of a fine one, so too, when the bhikkhu gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, his mind becomes steady internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. So this is the way of overcoming unwholesome bad states. And beginning here, it says that the bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign. The common word for sign is nimitta. I'm sure you've heard the word nimitta before. People have talked about samadhi, nimittas, the kind of lights that arise in the mind when you practice deep samadhi meditation. But the word nimitta, usually in the Pali, has a sense of object. So it's like object of the mind. It's the object that you have while you're practicing meditation. So giving attention to here can mean meditation. It can also mean outside of meditation, but often it will mean meditation. So while you're giving attention to a certain object, a certain thing, right? And owing to that thing that you're giving attention to, it arises in him bad and unwholesome states connected with the 3 groups defilements: desire, raga, hate, dosa, and delusion, moha. Then, because of that, you should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome. So, first of all, what does it mean to give attention to some other sign? It can be 2 things. The word sign is deliberately ambiguous in the Pali. It can be object, but it can also be in a particular way of looking at the object. So if you're going to give attention to some other sign, what it means is that if you're looking at one object that might give rise to these negative states, you can change the object and look at something else instead. That is one way of understanding looking at another sign. Another way of understanding it is that how you apply the mind to the object. So, for example, you are contemplating, thinking about a particular person who you don't like very much, you find irritating or whatever. But then you remind yourself of all the good qualities of that person. You're looking at another side, another aspect of that person's personality. And by looking at that other aspect of the person's personality, you're focusing on a different side. That different side then is the side of the wholesome, the good. This is why the word sign is used, nimitta, either object or a particular characteristic of that object. And the evil, the unwholesome thoughts here connected with desire, hate, and delusion. We've already seen the objects, or we talked about desire, we talked about hate. Hate is a very strong word, but it actually means all categories of the ill will, negativity in the mind. It's a very broad word. But lastly, there's also delusion is also included here. So what do we mean by delusion? And the word delusion, moha, in the Pali, has very wide significance. It can mean many different things. And sometimes it means the very root delusion that we have inside of us. The delusion of a sense of self. The delusion that there is some happiness to be found. The delusion of permanence, where things are impermanent. It can mean that. But in this context, it means something much less. Because in this context, we're just talking about overcoming the unwholesome states, right? In this context, delusion or moha means like a mind which is not clear, a mind which is fogged up, which is confused, which is maybe a sloth of torpor, or you're restless, we lack of clarity in the mind. This is the main thing that refers to here. So it's some kind of lack of clarity apart from desire, apart from anger and deal with that. So any kind of state, so you can see the problem with all these states is that they lead to a mind which doesn't see clearly. It sees clearly that we really want to do in Buddhism, we understand things that they actually are. So, then the Buddha says, when he gives attention to some other side, connected with what is wholesome, then any evil and unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subsided. And this is just like we saw in the previous sutta. The Buddha said that what was the word again used over here? In the previous sutta, he considered that these things are dangerous, right? Actually, this is slightly different. So I think this is more like you understand, particularly a lot of defilements occur in connection with other people, because of my close connection with other people. This is very common, it happens everywhere. And because the defilements are often connected with people, one of the things that we need to do in life is often to realize that people are very complex. People have many aspects to them. Yes, they may have negative aspects to your life, but most people, a lot of people also have good aspects to them. And one of the great things about being a member of things like the Buddhist Fellowship or any other Buddhist organization is that you know that the people around you are generally going to be good people. Right? They're going to be good-hearted, they're going to try well, they're going to do their best in a sense, have good intentions. They're not going to be perfect, but sometimes they're going to do things which do irritate you, or does lead you, to think bad things about them. And then what you have to do is that you have to develop this attitude inside of you, of being able to see these people in a good light. Understand that the bigger picture is beautiful. That the people really are trying hard to live a good life. They're keeping the high precepts. If they're doing something good in the world, they're actually, trying to purify themselves. It is a wonderful thing to do. And that even just having the intention, even if you don't succeed all the time, just have that intention is such a beautiful thing to do. So learn to remind yourself of the good qualities in the people around you. And how wonderful it is to have, good people around you, to be part of such a group. And then, if you train that perception, the perception of the beautiful aspect of the people, then when the negativity or the annoyance comes up, very quickly you can switch off and remind yourself, actually, the big picture is beautiful. Why am I getting upset by tiny little, petty little things of daily life? Let me focus on the big picture instead. So have that big picture thing inside of you, and then you can move around and turn your attention away. This is one thing that it means here by giving attention to a different side. We're looking at a different aspect of that person. The other thing which is very useful is to remember that even if somebody may not be a particularly good person, remember that they want to be happy. They don't want to have suffering in life, but And if they do something which is stupid, which hurts you or hurts other people, the person that they're really hurting is themselves. They are the ones who get the first kind of pain from their own stupidity and their own bad actions. And when you think about it, instead of being well, everybody is to some extent self-centered. You know, we are the center of our own universe, so to speak. You know, that's just natural there. Of course we are that. But at the same time, if you can move a little bit away from thinking about yourself, and just reminding yourself that actually the other person is the one who really suffers more than you do. They don't understand that they create the suffering for themselves. They are saying stupid things, doing bad actions, without understanding the consequences of what they're doing. This is another way of looking at the big picture here. And then you can actually have compassion instead of having negativity or anger towards this other person. It's like skillful means, if you like, good ways of being able to overcome the negativity in the mind. So these are some of the ways. And of course, very often you will find that you have to find your own way of doing these things. Because we're all different and we all have our own ways which work for us, tend to work better for us. You have to do an investigation and try to figure out how can I overcome the negativity and bad thoughts by changing my focus, changing my attention onto something else, onto the positive, onto something wholesome, something which works. So there you are. That is the thing, and of course the same thing with desire. If you feel that there's too much desire, then remind yourself of the problems or whatever that desire can cause. So move away from that. So, then it says, with the abandoning of these negative states of mind, his mind becomes steady, internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. So, you can see there is a slight difference here from the previous sutta. In the previous sutta, the Buddha starts off and says, overcome the negative thoughts and focus on the good thoughts instead, and then overcome and forget about the good thoughts, and then go to samadhi. Here he's saying, as soon as the negative thoughts have been overcome, basically you are ready for samadhi practice. And what is going on here is that in the previous sutta, essentially the way I understand what is happening there, he's using the good way of thinking to overcome the negative way of thinking. So use the wholesomeness to overcome the unwholesome. And then, at that point, basically samadhi is ready. But once you have overcome the negative thoughts, it's not natural to go on keep thinking about the positive thoughts. At that point, you go straight to samadhi. You don't have to sit there keep thinking good things all the time. That's what he was saying before. That's what he's saying here. At that point, you overcome the negative, then you go to samadhi practice. So, then he brings it again, as in the previous sutta. He brings it, steadied the mind eternally, quietly, brought it to singleness, which means unification of mind, and then he has concentrated or unified the mind. So, like with all things in Buddhism, this is a very beautiful way to overcome negative thoughts, but it's not easy, it doesn't happen automatically. You have to actually develop another way of looking at people, but to develop another way of looking at circumstances around you. And development takes time. When you do that development, when you change your way of looking at things, then gradually you will be able to apply this method. When you have made a strong perception inside of yourself of the good qualities in others, then it's easy to apply this method. If you haven't made a strong perception inside of yourself, it's difficult to. So this is the thing. So these are, it's a great way, it's the best way of doing this. Remember that one of the ways to understand the suttas is that they are gradual. Everything happens according to a natural process. So because this is the first method that is applied here to how to overcome bad thoughts, it is also the best method. This is the ideal way of overcoming negative states of mind. Just put in a different way of looking at things, look at things in a wholesome way instead, and overcome that negative thought straight away. And that's why it is similarly on the peg here, you use the fine peg to get the fourth peg out. The fourth peg is the bad thoughts, the fine peg are the good thoughts. But again, all pegs are pegs, so eventually you want to get rid of the small peg as well, and then enter samadhi. So that is the first way, and if that fails, then you go on to the next method. The next method is as follows. If while he's giving attention to some other sign, connected with what is wholesome, and there still arise in him evil, bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should examine the danger in those thoughts. Thus, these thoughts are unwholesome, they are reprehensible, they result in suffering. While he examines the danger in those thoughts, and any bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, and with hate, and with delusion, are abandoned in him and subsided. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steady eternally, quietly, brought to singleness and concentrated. Just as a man or a woman, young, youthful, and fond of adornments, would be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted if the carcass of a snake or a dog or a human being were hung around his or her neck. In the same way, when the bhikkhu examines the danger in those thoughts, his mind becomes steady, eternally quieted, toward the singleness and concentrated. That has to agree with it. So, if the first method doesn't work, you move on to the second method. This is the second method, and this method here is very similar to the method that we saw in the previous sutta. You remember the danger in this thinking. You remember that it leads to suffering for others, for yourself, and for both. That is the danger. It is away from wisdom, right? So again, this is again something you have to develop. Seeing the danger in this is not a given thing. It is something you have to train yourself to be able to do that. But it is always about training, so that reflecting in the right way, giving rise to the right kinds of perception. So train yourself, see the danger, and it is very powerful. The simile that is used here to see the danger is very powerful simile. Like a young person who is fond of adornments would be horrified, humiliated, and disgusted if the carcass is like a dead body of a snake or a dog or a human being were hung around their neck. In the same way, you're horrified by unwholesome thinking. It shows you how dangerous the Buddha considered this thing. It's a very, very powerful simile here, very, very strong. And that is how dangerous, basically, it is. And that's why you're willing to go through a lot of trouble, a lot of effort to overcome these negative states of mind. And I know that, for those of you who have heard many of Ajahn Brahm's teachings, and been to his retreats perhaps, you will know that Ajahn Brahm even said that ordinary thinking is like the carcass of a dead dog hung around your neck. So even ordinary thinking, which may not be unwholesome, even that is highly harmful, because it blocks the beautiful face of samadhi, it blocks the natural beauty of the mind inside it, let alone the bad thinking. The bad thinking is much worse. That really is a rotten old snake which hangs around your neck. Not very nice. Not a very nice idea. So you get some idea of what these thoughts actually are like. So, again, a very powerful technique here. These two first techniques are, I think, the most powerful ones. And if I were you, I would focus on these particular techniques because they are really, really powerful in overcoming unwholesome states. And they're both revolve around wisdom, using wisdom to understand the unwholesomeness of things. Powerful stuff. Then, having done that, we come to the third technique. If, while he is examining the danger in those thoughts, but still arise in him bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then he should try to forget those thoughts. He should not pay attention to them. When he tries to forget those thoughts and does not pay attention to them, any evil and unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion are abandoned in him and subsided. With the abandoning of them in his mind, his mind becomes steady eternally, quieted, brought to singleness, and unified in samadhi. Just as a man with good eyes who did not want to see forms that had come within range of sight would either shut his eyes or look away. So too, when the bhikkhu tries to forget those thoughts and does not pay attention to them, his mind becomes steady eternally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated there. So this is then the third method, and this is if for example, you haven't got enough wisdom power to just avoid the thinking by using a nice thought to overcome the other one. We have got the wisdom power to be able to see the danger in these thoughts, and then what you do in this case is that you try not to pay attention to it. Forgetting here is asati, in other words, not being mindful of it, taking your mindfulness away from the objective. So how you do this is if you are doing a meditation practice or whatever, and you're doing, for example, the breath meditation, and then bad thought comes up in your mind. What do? You just drop the bad thought and you go put the focus back on the breath instead. So you don't pay attention to the bad thought. You don't have anything to do with it. You bring your attention back on the object instead. Or in daily life, if you're doing some work or whatever you're doing in daily life, and you find that a negative thought arises in the mind, and you have enough mindfulness to see that negative thought, then instead of following the negative thought, you place your attention back on your work, and you stay with the work, and you forget about that thought altogether. This is basically what this means. This is mostly meditation exercises because it all ends up with samadhi, with concentration of the mind. So usually these are the things done in meditation practice. So if you have some meditation, put your attention back on the breath again. Put your attention back on your metta object. Put your attention back on your vipassana object, if you do vipassana meditation, whatever it is. And you overcome that negative state of mind again. So you can see from the simile, it's very clear what it means. You shut your eyes, you don't see it anymore. In other words, put your attention somewhere else, look away. That's what it means. So, and again, I'm sure many of you will be aware that when a negative state of mind has arisen and it becomes very strong inside of you, it's very difficult to just look away and look somewhere else. It's difficult because the strength, the thought tends to push itself through and try to sort of be there in the mind. It's actually quite hard. And that's why this method is not as powerful as the first two methods. The two first ones are really powerful ones. This is weaker. And because it's weaker, you only use it if the first two ones don't actually work. Then we come to the fourth method of overcoming impulsive thoughts. And it goes as follows. If while he's trying to not to pay attention to those thoughts and not being mindful of them, there's still rise in him bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desires, with hate and with illusion, then he should give attention to the stilling of the thought formation of those thoughts. When he gives attention to the stilling of the thought formation of those thoughts, then the bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and illusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steady eternally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? Or he would walk slowly, then he might consider, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And he would stand and he might consider, why am I standing? What if I sit? And he would sit and he might consider, why am I sitting? What if I lie down? And he would lie down. By doing so, he would substitute for each grosser posture one that is more subtle. So too, when the bhikkhu gives attention to the stilling and the thought formation of those thoughts, his mind becomes steady eternally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. So, this is a little bit cryptic to understand what is meant here. This is one of those cases where it's good to have somebody who has read many suttas, which I have to say I have. It's the truth, I have read many suttas. So they understand what is meant here. So what he's talking here about stilling the thought formation. Now, what does that mean? I mean, I think, personally, I think this is a bad translation, because it's impossible to really understand what that means. I find it very hard anyway. So you have to go back to the Pali to see what the Pali says. And the word formation here is sankhara. And the word sankhara, the normal meaning of that word in the sutras is the will, the volition, the driving force inside of the mind, which makes you look here, look there, and do everything in life basically. It's the will inside of you, the volition that drives things. So what he's saying here is that we're giving attention to the splitting of the will there. So why does that work? And the reason that works is because the reason why you have a bad thought arising in your mind is because you want it to be there. There is a volition, a will behind that bad thought that gives rise to the thinking in the bad way. So because there is basically you desire, you want that bad thought, that's why it arises. It may not feel like that way, but when you see very clearly, you can see that actually there's a will that gives rise to that bad thought. So, by stilling the will, by making the will more peaceful, you're taking away the thing which fuels the bad thought. It's the will that fuels the bad thought. By reducing the will gradually, stage by stage, you're taking away the fuel that drives the bad thinking. And this sort of practice is often called sometimes in meditations like bare awareness. Bare awareness, where you sit there and you just have awareness of whatever is happening, but you don't control the situation, right? In this case, like you have bare awareness of the negative thought. You don't have willpower, you don't push it, you just sit back and you watch. And as you sit back and watch, the will starts to decrease. The willpower behind that thinking decreases. And that's why we have the simile of the man who goes fast and slowly, then stands and sits down and lies down. Because the will is gradually becoming less and less and less. So the posture is becoming more and more subtle until you lie down. And lying down is like being completely relaxed. There's no more willpower there at all, and you feel completely at ease. And the thinking at that point it stops because the willpower behind it has stopped. So this is like just sitting back and watching, not having any impetus, not putting any willpower into it, just watching, completely at ease, completely relaxed. And then just seeing the thinking gradually decreasing, until it disappears completely. Again, I have to warn you, this is difficult to do that. It's difficult because once an unwholesome state arises in the mind, usually there's a lot of force, as I said before, behind that state. Because you have perceived something in a certain way, and it's hard just to stand back and allow it to disappear. So again, this is most easily it happens if you catch the state at an early stage, and if it is a very weak kind of defilement, not a strong defilement, but a weak defilement, then you can do that. If it's very strong, it's difficult. But anyway, that's the idea behind this. And if nothing else works, you can try this one, of course, as well. One thing I should say, and you will have noticed that when we read this, that it has always the kind of the masculine pronouns, always he and bhikkhu and these things. And first of all, the idea that the Buddha talks to bhikkhus, as I think I mentioned before, doesn't mean that this does not apply to lay people. It applies to lay people just as much. It's just that his audience happens to be bhikkhus. Secondly, the reason it says he is also because it's talking to monks. So he uses the pronoun he. But don't feel excluded if you're not a man. It doesn't mean that you're excluded from this. You're also part. It's the same principle that works for men and women alike. So please don't feel that you have somehow been left out of this. I just want to make that point because sometimes people might wonder why it's so masculine oriented. Sometimes it's fine that bhikkhuni and lay women also feature in the sutras. Anyway, so then we come to the last of the 5 methods. And there is a reason why it's last. The reason why it's last is because you should use this one as a powerful resort. And this is like, if you like, probably one of the most controversial of these methods. Many people would say that be very careful with using this particular method. And this method is as follows. This is the willpower method. While he's giving attention to cynical thought formation, or the thought volition, or the thought will, there still arise in him bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion. Then, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. When, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, crushes mind with mind. Then, any bad, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him, and they subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steady internally, quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a strong man might seize a weaker man by the head or shoulders, beat him down, constrain him, and crushing. So too, with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, the bhikkhu beats down, constrains and crushes mind with mind. His mind then becomes steady internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. So, you can see probably why this is slightly controversial, because the thought of willpower being used here, and many people who are like psychologists, they will say we've got to be careful with repressing too much of the mind. If we repress things too much, we suppress it down, sometimes it just comes back with a vengeance later on. So it's really, when you are quite a skilled, I think, meditator, this particular approach applies, and it applies mostly to kind of refine defilement of one form like that. If you use this too much in ordinary life, it can lead to problems. But the strange thing is, and somebody once pointed out, that this is the method people tend to use first. This is the method that we are used to using, in a sense. In daily life, I always think back to, when people explain to me how they live and how I too sometimes actually do things. It is very easy if you have a thought arising in your mind you don't like. You think something that I shouldn't be thinking this, I don't like this, and the first initiative is to crush it, to push it out of the way. I don't want to see this. I don't want to identify with this thought because I consider myself superior to this kind of thinking. If you push it out of the way, you use the willpower to crush the thinking. So often we use this method first, but in fact it actually comes last. And that is an important thing to keep in mind. This sort of method comes last, and it comes when you're quite skilled at how you practice meditation. Some people have also pointed out that crushing mind with mind is elsewhere said to be a practice that was done by ascetics in India at that time. And it is said elsewhere not to lead to awakening, not to lead to enlightenment. So how come it's used here if it doesn't lead to awakening elsewhere? And the reason is that it's a temporary method. It's temporary to lead to a certain stage, and then you take it on from there. But in its own right, does not lead to awakening. It's only a part and parcel of the path to awakening, if you like. So, these then are the 5 methods for overcoming negative thoughts. So these are, it's very useful contemplation, very useful things that have been said here. I recommend you to read the Sutta again in the future on your own, because usually it takes a few readings before you get the hang of what the Suttas are saying there. But remember also, it's gradual. This is one of the very important ways for understanding the Suttas, that they are gradual. There is a natural sequence of the Suttas. Once you understand that there is a natural sequence, it becomes possible to decipher the Suttas and understand them much better than you would otherwise. Then we come to the last part of the Sutta. Figures, when a bhikkhu is giving attention to some sign or object, owing to that object there arise in him bad and wholesome thoughts, connected with desire, hate, and delusion. Then, when they give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, any such bad and wholesome thoughts are abandoned in him and subside. Right? They're supposed to subside when you do that. In other words, this method only has work when the thought disappears by itself. And with the abandoning of them, his mind becomes then concentrated, etc. When he examines the danger in those thoughts, the same thing, when he tries to pay no attention to them, when he gives attention to the stilling of the activity behind the thought. And then, lastly, when with his teeth clenched and the tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind. Such bad and wholesome thoughts are abandoned in him, and his mind becomes steady internally, quieted, brought to singleness and concentrated. This bhikkhu is then called a master of the courses of thought. He will think whatever thought he wishes to think, and he will not think any thoughts that he does not wish to think. And I will skip one sentence, and then it comes to the end. That is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this is how you become the master of the thinking, and you will be able to think exactly what you want to think. You will never have a thought of ill will in your whole life. You will never have any desire in your life, no thought of harming them. Isn't that a wonderful idea? Then we have any of those thoughts. So that is what happens if you practice this thing fully to the full extent. You will notice I left out the last sentence there, severed cravings, clung off the factors, etc. And the reason I left it out is that it doesn't really fit the context very well. Again, in the Chinese version of the Sutta, that sentence is missing here. And I think the reason why it's missing is that becoming a master of one's thought is not the same as reaching full awakening here. So it's said that that sentence has somehow come into the Pali by accident, but it shouldn't actually be there. And I think that the Chinese version is more accurate in this particular respect there. So, there you are. Yes, okay, yeah? Please go first, yeah.
Looking at these times, during meditation, we often come across this pain, right? But the pain will give rise to feeling of aversion, of hate. So how do we apply this time method to deal with the pain during
Let's make it with pain to change your posture then. Sit differently, sit in a chair, change your posture. That is the best way to overcome pain then. I know that sometimes people say that they should be observing the pain and learning from it, but very often it doesn't lead to learning, it leads, as you say, to aversion instead. That's a very, very common reaction. If you want to enjoy meditation anymore, my leg is pain, so I should really change my posture, so I apologize for pointing it out. But the idea is that it just basically leads away from meditation practice. People are not going to be interested in meditation if you have too much pain. That's why I say sit on the chair, sit on a nice stool, have a nice soft cushion, do whatever you need to do to be comfortable. Most people here, I doubt that many people here have sat on the floor, when they grew up, anything like that. Most people here are probably like me, who grew up sitting on chairs, right? So if you grow up sitting on a chair, sitting cross-legged, it's quite what you're getting used to. It's not natural. So because of that, sit on chairs in your meditation practice. It's perfectly acceptable. In our meditation center in Perth, we have lots of chairs at the back of the room. So those who want to sit on the floor sit in the front. Those who want to sit on chairs sit at the back of the room. And it's wonderful. And we tell people straight away, please use the chairs. They're there for being used. Don't be afraid of using the chairs. The reason why we sit cross-legged, and this is where you have to be careful, is things like the Anapanasati Sutta. It says you sit down and you cross your legs. But as I was trying to point out this morning, the reason it says that is because that was a comfortable position in those days. And there's evidence for that in the Vinaya and the Suttas. So they were actually sitting what was comfortable for them when they were sitting cross-legged. So when they say sit down cross-legged, it means sit comfortably. It doesn't mean sit cross-legged necessarily. Yeah.
And then we should watch, therefore take the opportunity to watch our state of mind, be aware of the state of mind, and how we develop. So very confused.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the thing is that you can learn something from pain. You can see the pain coming and going. You can see that it's not nothing substantial there. It arrives and comes away. There can be a little bit of learning from that, but it's still very superficial learning. I would say the much more important thing for most people is to feel a sense of happiness in the meditation, feel peaceful enough, feel good enough in meditation practice. The learning, the real deep learning, happens much later on the spiritual path, when your mind becomes very, very peaceful, very bright, and very steady. So do what works for you. Don't listen to me, don't listen to other teachers. Ask yourself what works. And remember, what works is whatever gives rise to more mindfulness, more samadhi, more one-pointedness, more purity of mind, more compassion in life. If you're becoming a better person, if your mind is becoming more clear, if you're sleeping more clearly, if your meditation is improving, then you're going the right way. Don't blindly hold on to any method. Don't listen to anybody specific. Look inside yourself, and you know you're going the right way then. So I'm personally, this is just my personal take on these things. I'm very concerned about people sitting with too much pain. I think maybe for some, maybe there are a few who can benefit from that. But I think the vast majority of people do not benefit from too much pain. They benefit from a sense of ease and relaxation meditation, peace, feeling good about yourself. That is what really works in meditation practice. Then you feel happy, you feel it's giving. You know, the Buddha says all the time, the path of Buddha is a happy path. And if you get full of aversion and negativity because of the pain, it's not a happy path anymore. It's a path of suffering. So be careful of the path of suffering. The Buddha talks about the middle way, right? The middle way means not torturing the body, not tormenting the body. Sitting with lots of pain is torturing the body then. It's quite clear. It's very clear right there in the middle way. Don't torture the body then. The body, ideally, should neither be tortured nor should it be indulged. If you don't torture the body, if you don't indulge the body disappears. And that is a great thing to happen, because when the body disappears, you can focus on the meditation itself. If you have pain in the body, the mind goes to the body. Just as bad as having indulgence. The reason why indulgence is no good is because the happiness is found in the body, so the mind goes out to the body then. If you have pain in the body, the mind also becomes interested in the body, because there's a problem to be solved. The body is painful, so the mind goes out to the body. You cannot sit still inside it, but just be peaceful inside it. So that's why both the tormenting and indulgence are bad. But I say to people, if you're going to make a mistake, rather indulge a little bit, rather torment yourself a little bit. It's better to have a little bit of indulgence. Let's see, that doesn't make you feel averse and negative and angry, right? So if you have doubts, err on the side of indulgence rather than erring on the side of pain and difficulty. That's me, yeah. So, yes. Sorry, yeah.
I was a bit confused. Is the Buddha addressing allowing monks to do something to do meditation? Or is it addressing the monk who's already able to go to Pasana? Because if the guy only got, the monk only got to Pasana, and also thought without arising in mind.
Yeah.
So I don't know which aspect of the state of meditation that she does.
Sure, yeah. I think you're addressing everybody. Because even if you do attain, even if you are a jhana attendant, it's true that you don't have unwholesome thoughts after a jhana. But even such a person, if they don't practice jhana for a long time, a few hours or a few days or whatever, eventually those thoughts can come back again. And because they come back again, they also these methods are even for jhana attainers, they're actually useful. But I think they are useful for the whole spectrum, from the novice monk to the person who is not fully enlightened to get very close. So basically for everybody. And this is the thing, that the reason why it's such a broad method is that at the beginning of the path, what you're overcoming are the very coarse aspects of the defilements. Like the gross anger, the gross negativity, the coarse pleasures, the coarse cravings you have in life. This is what you overcome in the beginning, and you use this method to overcome that. But then, as your mindfulness becomes more powerful, as you understand yourself better, the middle defilements come into the mind. So you understand the middle defilement. Then you start to understand the refined defilements. That each stage of the path, you use these methods to overcome those defilements. So this is worthwhile for everybody. It's useful for everybody here. But it says in the beginning, the one who wants to attain samadhi. So if you want to attain samadhi, this is the one here. I recommend samadhi here. It's good. It's pleasurable. It's nice. You feel good about yourself afterwards. Yes, sir.
This 5 factors is part of Samavayama, right? I think it's the 4th factor.
Exactly. It's a very good point. It's part of Samavayama. It's also part of Samasati to some extent. Samavayama is the right effort on the Noble Eightfold Path, the 6th factor Noble Eightfold Path. That is defined as overcoming sense restraint is part of that, overcoming unwholesome thoughts is part of that. So it is there. But it's also interesting that even Satipatthana, even the 7th factor actually has a little bit of this. And the reason for that is because when you move from the 6th factor to the 7th factor, often there's at least a residue of unwholesome states left. And that is abandoned by Satipatthana practice, by things like mindfulness of breathing, for example. Actually, this might be a good time, that's the question I had before. I can ask that question now if you like to. The question we had before that. There was a question written down there. Yes, over here. Okay, yeah. I can take the written questions as well then. I have to be careful to stay too I'll just reply to this one. It says, since Anapanasati says it fulfills the Mahasatipatthana or Satipatthana, then how do I practice both of them? What's the focus of Anapanasati and Satipatthana? Where the difference lie between them? Thank you. And it's a very good question, it's a very important question, because Satipatthana and Anapanasati, what is the difference, and what is the similarities? How do they actually work together? And the interesting thing, when you read the Anapanasati Sutta, and this is one of the great insights you do get from reading the Sutta again, it says in the Anapanasati Sutta that by practicing Anapanasati, you fulfill Satipatthana. So, what that means is, all you have to do is to practice Anapanasati. You don't actually have to do anything apart from that. That is Satipatthana practice. So when people say that you should practice Vipassana meditation, usually what they mean by that is that you practice Satipatthana. That's usually what they mean. You can say, Anapanasati, I will fulfill my Vipassana by practicing just Anapanasati. That's enough. That's sufficient. Anapanasati takes you all the way to enlightenment. It's a very useful thing to know, because sometimes Satipatthana can get complicated, people do different things and different practices. This is a very simple way to understand that you can practice Satipatthana to its conclusion, to the absolute fulfillment of Satipatthana, just by watching the breath there. Very, very useful. So if you look at the Satipatthana instead, and what Satipatthana is apart from Anapanasati, Satipatthana also includes things like contemplating the 32 parts of the body, cemetery contemplation, these kinds of things. And these are like there to help you overcome defilement of the mind. That's why they are part of Satipatthana meditation. But if you can do Anapanasati, you don't actually have to go through these kinds of contemplations. Then to go into the Vedananukasana, the second aspect of Satipatthana, the Chittanukasana, the third aspect of Satipatthana, is contemplation of feeling, contemplation of mind. It is not described very well in the Sutta anywhere how you're supposed to do this, except, again, in the Anapanasati Sutta. Anapanasati Sutta says the way you do Vedananukasana, the way you do Chittanukasana, contemplation of feeling and mind, is by doing Anapanasati. That's the only real explanation in the Sutta as to how to do these practices. So sometimes you go on a meditation retreat and they tell you to look at the feelings in your body and these kind of things. And that's probably fine, you can probably do that. But if you want to really follow what the Buddha said, you should do Anapanasati. And you contemplate things with feelings as you progress in Anapanasati, feelings arise inside of you, and that is the Vedananukasana according to the Anapanasati Sutta. So it's quite different sometimes than what is taught in certain schools of meditation. And this, for me, is very powerful. When I read this kind of things, I think this is very interesting, because here you have the Buddha's way of explaining these things. Yes, sir. Yeah.
This quotation, is this come from commentary or from the Sutta?
From the Sutta. In the Sutta itself. Directly there, it says, when you practice Anapanasati, you fulfill the four foundations of mindfulness. It explains why. It says the reason why is because contemplation of the breath is one body, and one many different types of body. So because of that, the word body in Pali doesn't necessarily mean physical body. Just like in English, you can say a body of evidence. A body of evidence means a group of evidence, right? Put together. The same way in the Pali. So the breath is like a type of body, in the sense that all different types of breath come within the body of breath. The Sutta says the reason why breath contemplation is body contemplation is because the breath is a certain type of body and not body to it. In the Chinese version it says that when you contemplate the feelings through Anapanasati, you contemplate certain feelings among all possible feelings. When you contemplate mind states in Anapanasati, you contemplate certain mind states among all possible mind states. When you contemplate afterwards impermanence, the Anapanasati Sutta has the contemplation on impermanence of viraga, which is not fading away, and nirodha cessation, and apanistika, which is giving up. This is the last part of the Anapanasati Sutta. These things are last part of Satipatthana practice. That is actually said in there. Have a read of that Sutta yourself. I'm sure you find it very interesting. There's so much information in the Sutta. If you read them in the right way, if you know where to look and you read in them, read carefully, you will find it there. Very, very fascinating. So, maybe we should have a small break again then. So, so if people maybe want to have a cup of tea or something, or just stretch your legs again, and whatever, and we'll meet back again in maybe 20 minutes or so, or whatever again. Very good.